when we think about the Christian God, and when we think about like the Muslim God or Allah, when I was in South Africa, I would hear a lot that it was the same God. They just had different names. So I remember like very clearly a conversation with a Muslim woman who, would trace things back to Abraham and say, well, before Abraham, like it was the same religion. We had the same God. I think this misconception is kind of growing even now. How do you respond to it? And, what would you say? Like, was it the same God prior to, or is it different God?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I hear that a lot as well. And this seems to be something that Muslims, when they're in the minority in a culture like in the United States, they like to try to draw as many similarities as possible. They like to project the idea that we worship the same God, and there are just very, very minor differences, like in our different denominations, for example. But the answer is unequivocally no. We do not worship the same God as Muslims, and I'll give you an analogy. Okay, my name is Laura Powell, right? So it's kind of common, certainly not an uncommon name. So let's say there are two different people who say that they know Laura Powell, but they describe her, each person describes the Laura they know so incredibly differently, so foundationally differently, with such different characteristics, priorities, passions, loves, hate, that you eventually realize, okay, so we might, these people might both be called Laura, but these are clearly two different people we're talking about. And that is really the case with the God of the Bible and the God of the Quran. When we look at the nature of God in the Bible, and then we look at the nature of God in the Quran, we see that we cannot possibly be talking about the same being. They are just far too different in every significant way. And in fact, in some of the ways that the Quran has Allah or God describing himself, those are similar ways that the Bible describes Satan. So these they're dramatically different. They cannot possibly be the same being.
That's helpful. I just did a quick search on Facebook. Sure enough, there's a lot of Laura Powells.
Yeah, exactly.
on Facebook. Yes. And they're not all you. There's a lot of them. And so that's a helpful analogy. Maybe we can just unpack a little bit more about some of these differences between the God of the Bible and the God of Islam. That might be helpful if we could give a few specifics for people.
Yeah, absolutely. So just regarding the nature of God, the God of the Bible is relational. The God of the Quran is not at all relational. So Yahweh is relational in that he has existed eternally as a Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. He walked with Adam and Eve and spoke with them and was with them in the Garden of Eden. He came in the flesh, the second person of the Trinity came in the flesh as a man, Jesus, to display God to his people, to also die for his people, but so that we could know him, the people who lived at his time could know him personally and intimately, even physically, so that those who were yet to come would know him spiritually, know him as we read about him, and look forward to knowing him even closer and more personally, face to face on the new earth. And so we see God being relational, being with us personally, in an up close and personal relational way on the new earth. The God of Islam is not a Trinity. He has been alone and very content to be alone for all eternity past until he created Adam. And people are his slaves. according to the Quran. They are not his children. They cannot become his children. People exist to serve him as his slaves. Another difference is that the God of the Bible, similarly, the God of the Bible wants to be known, but the God of the Quran cannot be known. Yahweh resides with his people. He calls us into relationship with him. His commands are a reflection of his character. So as we are getting to know his commands, we are getting to know his character. Allah's commands can be known, but that's as much as we can get to know him. They are not reflections of his character. His commands are not reflections of who he is, and he himself cannot be known. The God of the Quran reveals commands that are somewhat whimsical. They're not rooted in his character at all. And so really, even by getting to know his commands, we're not getting to know him any better. He's just saying, okay, well, I have the power, so you, my slaves, do what I say, and let me just evaluate how good you are at obeying me.